Welcome to a walk in the garden. I'm Liz Davey and we're filming on NCTV, Norfolk Community Cable, here in my garden in Norfolk, Massachusetts. And I'm in the herb garden and it is now the end of August. We have had a very rainy August, which is why my show is now at the end of August instead of in the early or middle part. It seemed like we had rain almost every day throughout the month. Everything has grown and grown and grown with all the rain we've had this summer. We're harvesting herbs like crazy, and it's time to get them harvested and preserve them, which we'll do a little inside later. It's also time to make some notes. I've got my clipboard here. Walk around the garden with my clipboard and make notes of what I would like to add next year, what I might like to take out next year, and in this case, we need to prune this tree down because I'm not getting enough sun on the herbs, and they really do like a little more sun than they're getting. They do always get some afternoon shade, but it's gotten so that afternoon comes a lot earlier than it used to because of all the trees and the branches that are hanging low. So we need to work on getting some more sun in here next year. I have a few plants that I will be bringing inside, and I'm going to put those up on my back patio so that they're ready to come inside. And I'll also be washing them with a little mild soap and water so that I don't bring any creatures inside with the plants. This is a rosemary and it's done really well outside, and hopefully we can keep it over the winter and continue snipping parts off to use in cooking. I also have a bay leaf that has done well and put on a lot of new bay leaves, and I'll be bringing that in as well, and I'll be putting them in a sunny area. I have lots of herbs that we can use. Today, when we do some cooking, we're going to use some marjoram, which is back there. That's an annual plant, so I need to either use it or dry it before the first frost. The same is true of basil. This is a bit of basil. I have another type of basil down in front, and those two are annuals, and they will not survive a frost. And we have to start thinking about that. When I first moved here over 50 years ago, we used to get a frost very soon after Labor Day. Now it seems like our frosts are more like the middle of October. So it gives you a lot more time to enjoy the gardens. Some of my herbs are perennial in some climates, but annuals for us, and that would be lemongrass and the scented geraniums. They will not come back another year. So again, I need to harvest them or dig them up and bring them in the house for the winter. I will probably harvest the lemon verbena and then buy new small plants next spring. I'm not going to do much cutting back in here until spring. Many of these are kind of sub-hardy. The different rue and southern grass, southern wood, I will leave those for the winter. I can cut back the oregano and some of the other things, and I'll be harvesting quite a bit of the other herbs and drying them to keep for winter. Sage, thyme, and that sort of thing. Now let's head on over to the perennial garden and see what's going on there. The summer blooms are going fast, but the fall blooms are coming fast too. I do keep trimming back. I put some zinnias in this garden. They've gotten pretty leggy and tall, and once they're finished blooming, I cut them back to the stems. These are finished with the blooms, and this causes them to branch out a little bit, and we'll get blooms all the way until frost with these zinnias. Any lilies that have bloomed, I'll cut off the blooming head of those, and these will add to the compost. We're getting ready for some fall flowers. In the back I have a Baltonia, which is an aster relative. It is not an aster, but it has little white flowers that are tiny daisies. This is an aster, and it's a heartleaf aster. You can tell by the leaves, and it will bloom soon. It has lots of buds. And then I have Eupatorium chocolate. The chocolate refers to the leaves, which are a dark purple and kind of brownish underneath, and it will have some white blooms. I have a Montauk daisy in here, which should have some daisy flowers on it later on. The daylilies have finished, and I've cut those back. We have some other asters. These are a shorter aster, purple dome, and it is a popular one for gardens. I have a little goldenrod in here. These are a very dark purple, and the yellow goldenrod will look nice with those. They'll be out in just a week or so. This is a phlox, and this has bloomed really for about a month and a half. It's called Gina is the name of it. And the reason I got this one, it has smaller blooms than some of the others, but it is supposed to be the one that is most likely to attract butterflies. And we have had a lot of butterflies. Monarchs and yellow tiger swallowtails and black swallowtails, and a lot of the smaller butterflies as well that are fun to look up in the insect book. Another thing I can do now is start collecting seeds. And this is my butterfly weed, and the seeds grow in with this fuzzy stuff that helps spread them all over the place. And if you want to save the seeds, you can see that the seeds are attached to these aerial fluffy pieces that will send them all over. And so I will just put them in the bag for now as they become, as the pods start to open up. The pods are kind of decorative, left on the bush, and I'll just add them to the bag. And then once they've dried well, I can shake the bag and the seeds will mostly go to the bottom. And I've labeled it because regular butterfly weed has the same type and look of the seeds, but of course they have different blooms, so I want to make sure I keep them straight if I collect from both. A lot of people like to plant this. I would like to plant some more of this next spring. I have an area beyond my garden that right now is growing wonderful weeds, and I think it would be very nice to have butterfly weed instead of the other types of weeds that reseed into my garden. So I'll collect more seeds, and then in the spring we'll start some plants to put in some other areas. The roses are putting on some more bloom. Actually, I find some of the best rose blooms are in the late summer, early fall. You don't have as much problem with the insects, and the roses just seem to stay a little bit nicer. We fertilized this last month, and now we're seeing the results of that. At this point, I won't deadhead it. Normally during the season, I cut off the spent blooms. But at this point, I want the rose to form rose hips, and that tells the rose that it's time to start thinking about going to bed for the winter. We want it to not be putting on a lot of new growth and new blooms as we get into the colder nights of fall. A couple more plants that are going to give us some fall color would be this aster. And I think it's October Skies, and you can see it has a few blooms right now, but it's loaded with buds. So this will be a sea of blue very shortly. And we have Autumn Joy Sedum, which is starting to turn pink, and it will go through pink and then into a dark rusty burgundy color as fall progresses. In the back I have a Anise hyssop, which has been wonderful for butterflies and bees. The bees have been all over it. You can probably see a few flying right around right now. We've had honeybees and bumblebees and many, many other bees that are native to this area that are pollinators. Not everything is honeybees are not native bees, but they are used for pollination and they're pretty widespread. But there are plenty of other bees that also do the job of pollination. In the back I have a butterfly bush, and I usually keep that deadheaded pretty well, and it has attracted, again, a lot of pollinators and a lot of butterflies. Hummingbirds have been around. They also like these plants, the butterfly bush and the anise hyssop, and also the phlox. And we've had hummingbirds. I'm buzzed by hummingbirds constantly out here. You hear a buzzing noise and you look and there's the hummingbird flying around. A few more zinnias, and again, I'll keep these deadheaded, which will cause them to branch out a little bit and keep blooming. The allium is just about finished. If I want to dry some of these pods, now is probably the time to pick them and put them in a cool, dark spot so that they can dry a little bit more. A chrysanthemum, and this is a good time to plant chrysanthemums. If you plant them now, don't expect them to come back in the spring. This is one that's been here probably 10 years. I planted it in the spring, and that's the difference why it continues to grow. Occasionally you'll have one that comes back, but generally the hardy mums that they sell right now are really not hardy in this climate. They would be if you planted them in the spring, but usually they're not available in the spring at the nurseries. So to get around that, you can mail order small mums in the spring, and if you plant them then, you can count on them to return each year. If you deadhead them, you'll have plenty of blooms and they'll stay a little shorter. If you don't deadhead them and pinch them back, they will become very tall and leggy. So you want to make sure you do the proper pinching to keep them in a good form. More phlox. This is almost gone. That is a white phlox. Again, it's had so many pollinators on it. I've had to cut back a few things because the Shasta daisies just overgrew the area, and so we just have some of the foliage left that was at the base of the Shasta daisies, and that will stay for the fall. I have a poppy, oriental poppies put on bloom or put on foliage in the fall. This is completely normal, so you can expect as you get some fall rains that the oriental poppies will put on quite a lot of foliage. The other thing that puts on foliage, and they're starting all over my garden, are grape hyacinths. And again, perfectly normal. It will not interfere with their blooming next spring. It's what they do, and it's good really because it tells you where they are so that if you go to plant something else, you don't plant over the top. Adding a lot of color are the black-eyed Susans, and they're continuing to bloom. And I can start cutting those back a little bit and see if we can keep them blooming a little bit longer. More sedum, and a few more blooms on some of the reblooming daylilies. This is one called Happy Returns, and it is returning. I did cut off all the old bloomscapes so that Happy Returns is returning. Now is the season for grasses, and this is a Cheyenne Sky, I think. And it has kind of a rusty colored bloom head, and also the upper leaves turn a reddish color in the fall. It's been a challenge to keep it weeded. This year with all the rain, we've had fewer days to work in the garden, but everything has grown and taken up a lot of space too. So it's time, when I'm making notes, to decide which things need to be thinned out and which things can be added to get more bloom throughout the summer. This is a lemongrass, which is an herb, and I can either pot this up and bring it in the house or just let it go, and it will not withstand heavy frost. It is a tropical plant. Lemongrass is used in a number of Thai dishes and other ethnic cookery, and it's really quite a nice lemon flavor. Makes a great tea too, the lower stems. I may well dig this one up to bring inside. It's time to think about what plants you're going to bring in and what plants you want to save seeds from. as you go forward. Now let's head down to the vegetable garden. Things are busy there. Most of what I've been doing in the vegetable garden is harvesting and doing some weeding as well. I did plant some more lettuce, which will hopefully mature into the fall. It likes cooler weather. Hopefully we will get a little cooler weather. And the Swiss chard will continue, as will the beans. I'm still getting very good bean harvests. I have yellow beans and green beans, and these are the same beans that I've been harvesting since about July. And they take a little rest, maybe the first part of August, but now they're bearing again. So I'm getting plenty of beans. I've been able to put some in the freezer for winter meals, and I need to pick them about every 3 days. I also planted a couple of pumpkins, and it's always a guess whether they will mature. I already have a couple little pumpkins on the vine, so they will probably give me a couple decorative pumpkins, or I can cook them and put, again, some pumpkin in the freezer or make pumpkin bread or pie with the small pumpkins. These are the small New England pie pumpkins, so there's one over there. And they've kind of taken over the strawberries. It does keep the weeds down, and it doesn't hurt the strawberries at all. And these vines, of course, will all go once it frosts. I have been getting some late raspberries. Down at the end of the raspberries, I have a few raspberries that are of the variety August Red, and they have been very good this year. Many years we don't have enough rain for a good fall raspberry crop. This year they've been quite good. We're going to use a few of those as we cook today. And I hope to buy some more plants for next spring because I really enjoy them. They seem to be a little firmer than my other raspberries, and it's awfully nice to have them late in the season. We have plenty of kale to harvest, broccoli. There's a lovely butterfly on the zinnias. I enjoy having some flowers in the garden, and it's flitting around on the flowers. I don't know if the camera can get it or not as it flies around. And I have plenty of cabbages, cucumbers, arugula, and my herbs. The herbs have been quite good this year. I planted a new type of basil that is resistant to a number of diseases, and so far I've had the best basil ever. And I think it's well worth the extra price of the seeds if you've planted basil before and not had very good luck with it. It's probably worth it to buy the extra resistant seed. It is more expensive, but I've gotten a good crop. Plenty of cherry tomatoes, and I've been picking those every couple days, and we've been enjoying them. I've also roasted a few of them with some garlic, and again, put them into the freezer and use them with pasta this winter. But I will keep picking those. And cucumbers. Every time it rains, we get more cucumbers. I grow them on a trellis, and we can just reach in and pick them off, although there are also some lower down. And we've had a great crop of cucumbers this year due to all the rain. Last year it was so dry that I had very few cucumbers. And my beans quit very early last year. So one year is never like another in the garden. And you just have to take it as it comes and enjoy the harvest that you get. Different things will grow faster and better each year. Now let's head back out and do a little preparation for winter. I didn't buy any plants for this container or several of the others in my yard. Instead, I have used cuttings that I take in the late summer. And that's what I'm going to do today. This is a Plectoranthus, and let me come back with the scissors. And what I want to do is pick pieces that are just under where leaves come out. And I have Plectranthus. I also have another type. And let me get some of that. And Coleus. And the Coleus is brilliant this year. Again, the extra rain has helped, especially since I'm somewhat of a lazy waterer. And I've got about 5 different kinds of Coleus throughout my garden, which I will be putting in as cuttings. But once with the little cuttings that you grow, they grow into big plants. And what we want to do, I have a product called rooting hormone, and 1 little jar of that is probably a lifetime supply. And I take off the bottom 2 leaves and cut that stem right under where the leaves came out. And I may reduce the size of the leaf if they're large. And I'm going to dip it in the rooting powder. And I've put potting soil into the pots. I'll continue doing that. And then I'm going to use a pencil to make a hole in the potting soil, which is dampened, and firm the soil around my cutting. And I'm going to continue with this. And this is another type of Plectranthus. And again, I'm going to cut it right under 2 leaves so that I have the area where the leaves came out, which is where the new roots will come from. Dip it into the rooting powder. And again, and I'll put 3 or 4 cuttings of each type into one of these pots. Then I'll set it over a little further where it's kind of part shady most of the time. And I'll just let them grow. This is the other Plectranthus. Again, pulling it off. You just want a few leaves, and we need to get a little more soil. I've moistened potting soil in this container. And we want to keep them watered well, too. Once I get them all planted, I'll give them a good drink. And again, using a pencil and dipping in the rooting hormone. I put some of the rooting hormone in the paper cup, and then I will discard it. That way I don't contaminate the whole container of rooting powder. And again, firm the soil around it. And we can expect these to start to root in about a month. They should be well rooted. And then around Thanksgiving, between Thanksgiving and Christmas, or even after Christmas, there will be 3 or 4 of the plants in each of these pots. I'll bring them in under the lights once they have all rooted, and as the temperature drops, again, they will not survive a frost, I'll put them under plant lights. And again, Thanksgiving, Christmas, once they've well rooted and started to grow, I can transplant them into individual pots and keep them growing all winter until it's time to put them back in the planters next spring. It's really fun to take cuttings. You can do it with geraniums, you can do it with many of the annuals if you desire to do it. Some of the herbs you can try. It's fun to try it. You have nothing to lose, really, because the potting soil can go in the compost. You don't even lose that. And you may gain quite a few new plants from this. Again, I'm able to fill several large planters with things that I've either grown from seed or bulbs. Again, the canna was from a bulb, which I will save, and the zinnias were from seeds. And you can save zinnia seeds to plant again next spring. So there are many ways to save on plants for containers without having to go out and buy $300 or $400 worth of plants for each one. Now let's head back to the shade garden. With so much shade in my backyard, I grow quite a few hosta, and they do bloom. The foliage is what most people look for, but the blooms can add some color to the yard. These were a deep purple, but they're gone now, and the seed pods are out, and unless you want to try growing hosta from seed, it's time to just cut them off. Actually, it's time to cut them off. Even if you want to grow from seed, you can leave a few on and let them form seed pods. I don't grow hosta from seed. I have enough. And I am not interested in trying to hybridize them, which is a possibility if you wish to do it. There's a lot of information online, but it looks neater if you cut them off before they completely dry up. So I'll go through and cut them off. And I'm going to come down this way. And back here I have the remains of a bleeding heart. And that too I can cut all the way down. It will come back next spring, but we don't want to look at the dead stems. And you're getting a little head start on fall cleanup by cutting things back at this point. Come back here, and again, work on cutting it. So anything that's gone and has turned brown, it's time to start cutting back. Fall is almost here, and getting rid of some of these seed pods and plants that have completely finished for the season gives you a head start. Now let's head back by the pond. Here's some fish, and they're always ready for a snack. And we'll keep feeding them until the temperature really drops. And then I'll switch to a cool weather food. And they will enjoy that until it gets about 40 degrees, 40 to 50 degrees in the water. And then they will slow down considerably and we'll stop feeding them for the winter. Still have some hosta with blooms on them. A purple one there and a white one over here. I have hosta that blooms from June all the way through to late August, early September. One of the things that we need to do each month is add plant food to the water plants. And I get in there with these tablets and poke them into the dirt of each water plant. You don't want to see me climb over the rocks to do that today, but rest assured it will be done. And that's what keeps them blooming. They will come in for the winter, and we have another month or so before they will come in. They can withstand a very small amount of frost because they are in the water, which is warmer. Will stay a little warmer. And this area is kind of sheltered. Last month we picked garlic. We harvested it and put it in the shed to cure. And most of it's already been done, but what we do with it to get it ready to put in bags is cut off the roots. I've got some scissors here that are I'll cut those off as best I can. And then I'm going to use a scrub brush and scrub the dirt off of it. And then I'll cut the stem off. Maybe a ½ inch to an inch up. And discard the roots and the stem. Then this is ready to go into a mesh bag. I keep it in my garage all winter near my back door. My garage is not heated, but unless it gets extremely cold, it will stay above freezing, but still quite cool, and it's proved to be an ideal place to store my garlic. You can see we have a number of nice-sized cloves in this. In October, we'll plant new garlic, and perhaps this clove will be one of the ones that I open and use the cloves in it to replant another crop. Now, let's head on inside and see what we can do with all the things that we've been harvesting out in the garden. The first thing I'm going to work with today are peaches. And the New England peach crop was pretty much non-existent this year due to that hard freeze we had. But I was able to get a few peaches, and though we aren't going to enjoy as many, I did want to make a peach pie before we were finished. Now, to peel the peaches, I poured boiling water over them, or put them in a pan of boiling water, and then immediately poured the boiling water off and put the peaches into cold water. When you do that, the skin will just come right off. It makes peaches very easy to peel. I also used a product called Fruit Fresh because I prepared these about an hour ago. And peaches will turn brown very readily, as do apples and a few other fruits. Fruit Fresh is a produce protector. Basically, it's a chemical, but the chemical is ascorbic acid, and that's also vitamin C. So it's something pretty benign and something you need anyway, and it does prevent the browning of peaches. And so it's a very good thing to use on anything, any of the fruits, pears, avocados, any of those things that turn brown, and it only takes a half to a teaspoon for a whole bowl of fruit in order to preserve the color. It's worth keeping in the cupboard. To the peaches, I'm going to add a cup of raspberries. As I said, the raspberries have been producing a few here and there, and I'm going to use a cup of them in with my peaches. To that, I'll add a quarter of a cup of flour and a half cup of, let's see, I have to kind of remember my recipe here, a half cup of powdered sugar. Now, why they use powdered sugar in this recipe, I'm not sure, but I'm going to use it, as they said. A tablespoon of lemon juice for a little extra zest, and a half teaspoon of cinnamon. And I'm going to mix this together. And add it to my prepared pie crust. Single crust. It can either be homemade or purchased. Raspberries and peaches are a really nice combination. And good way to use a few raspberries. Add them with another fruit. Now I'm going to make a topping for this pie. And I have 6 tablespoons of butter. And to that I'm going to add half a cup of brown sugar, quarter cup of flour, half a cup of oatmeal, another half teaspoon of cinnamon, and a quarter cup of chopped pecans. Peaches and pecans are a nice southern recipe. And I'm going to mix those together to make crumbs. Butter has been softened, so it should be pretty easy to work with. You can use either a fork or your fingers or 2 knives. And we'll spread this over the top of the peaches and the raspberries. Try to get everything covered pretty well. I'm going to put this into the oven for 40 minutes at 375, and I've got this handy little plate that I put underneath it. It's a pan with a nonstick coating, and this catches any drips. Peaches, apples, many fruits will start to boil over a little bit. And it's nice to clean them off the plate instead of off the bottom of the oven. So I always set my pies on this little pan. And set it in the middle of the oven and set the timer for 40 minutes. Now the next thing I want to make, again, we started with dessert first because it takes 40 minutes to cook. But I'm going to make a salad, and what I'm making is tabbouleh, which is a Middle Eastern salad, and it's made with bulgur wheat, whole grain, and this is it's a whole grain red bulgur, and it doesn't require any cooking, really. You pour boiling water over the grain, and then you let it sit for about an hour, and it actually cooks itself and absorbs all of the water and becomes nice and fluffy. Now we're going to add a lot of vegetables to this, and I'm going to start with some onion. And we've got it's a cracked wheat product, yeah, but it's called bulgur wheat, and this is a Middle Eastern dish. I'm going to add a half a cup of onion, and you can use any type of onion you wish. I'm using red onion today. Scallions are good, as are sweet onions, but we'll add the onion. And then we want a whole cup of chopped parsley. That's a lot of parsley, but it is very good. Parsley is really nutritious, and it is good in the salad. This is chopped parsley, and I have quite a lot of parsley in the garden right now, and I like to use it fresh. And in order to keep parsley in the refrigerator, I put it in a glass jar. The important part is you really don't want it to touch the plastic. This is a plastic lid, but I won't put it that high. And if I have it full, real full, I can just add some wax paper at the top. But I wash the parsley and just leave the water on it that stays on it. Not soaking wet, but not completely dry. Put it in the glass jar, put it in the refrigerator. It will last for several months. This is a good way to store your parsley if you know that it's going to frost and your parsley is going to essentially be killed. Put some in a glass jar and you'll have it until Christmas. I've done this for a number of years and it really works very well. Now, we've added our parsley. Then I'm going to add a half a cup of chopped mint. Again, we're using herbs out of the herb garden. And 2 large tomatoes, which have been cut up. And 2 large cucumbers, which have been cut in pieces. Again, this is a very summery salad, and it goes well with all types of grilled meats. Stays in the refrigerator for several days. And I'm going to stir this around, and then I'm going to make a dressing to add to it. Right in the bowl with it. I'm going to add some salt. Teaspoon of salt. And my shaker has a little spout that opens. We're stirring that in. And we want to add oil. Olive oil. I'll add 3 tablespoons of olive oil. And 3 tablespoons of lemon juice. And we'll mix that together. And we have a very colorful and nutritious salad with whole grain and plenty of vegetables. And we'll set that over here, out of the way a little bit. And the next thing I'm going to make are some pork kebabs. And these will go on the grill, and I'm getting them ready to go on the grill by marinating them. So we're going to make a marinade for these. And I'll put them over this way. And I've put about a 1/4 cup of oil, olive oil, into my dish, and I'm going to add 3 tablespoons of lemon juice. Yes, we have a lot of lemon juice in this meal. And I have about, let's see how much, a couple teaspoons of minced garlic and parsley. Again, a lot of parsley being used right now while it's still fresh. And we want to put some onion in here too. Just about a 1/2 tablespoon of minced onion. And again, I had red onion from the other dish. And we want to add some salt and pepper to this mixture. Just a few shakes of each. And then the other herb that I want to use is chopped marjoram. And that really adds a nice flavor with the pork. And I'll mix this together. And then I'm going to pour it over these kebabs. And I'll turn them several times in the mixture and refrigerate it until it's time to grill them. We'll leave them out for now. And those will go on the barbecue grill until they're done. And then each person will get one. Since there are just 2 people eating here this evening, we made 2 kebabs. Now, it's time to talk about a little preserving. And I'm going to make some pesto. Pesto is really easy to make with the right ingredients. And the main ingredients for this pesto, the traditional pesto, is basil. And you need about 3 cups of firmly packed, washed basil. And I'm going to put it in the food processor, stems and all. And that should be about enough, I think. Save 1 piece out. I also want to add a couple of cloves, 2 cloves of garlic. Remember, we've got plenty of fresh garlic that we grew. Half a cup of toasted pine nuts. I toasted these just in a frying pan for a few minutes over medium heat. And 2 tablespoons of Parmesan cheese. You can add more later when you serve it. This is great on pasta, and we're going to preserve this by freezing it and have some pesto for the winter. You can add it to stew, use it on pasta, add it to stews. So many things you can do with the pesto. And then about 3/4 to a cup of olive oil. And then we're going to mix this to make a paste. And I'll probably need to scrape it down at least once. There are many different recipes and formulas for it, but basically the basic ingredients are the same. Now, in order to freeze it, you can leave it a little chunky, or you can continue to move my recipes down. And I'm going to use a spoon and fill an ice cube tray. And I want to fill each little compartment with pesto. It will darken, that's kind of a normal thing, but it does not affect the flavor. These can be added one at a time to stews. If you like your pesto with pasta, you can put it in larger containers to freeze. I'll just continue filling my ice cube tray. I made pesto with garlic scapes as well. You can do other herbs, parsley. There are many different pesto recipes if you check online. And we want to make sure it goes in the compartments. Once these are frozen, I will remove them from the ice cube tray. And put them in a plastic bag in the freezer. Takes up less space. We should have just about enough to fill the tray. I'm going to add it to tomato sauce, spaghetti sauce. Just adds that lovely flavor of the basil and garlic. If you want to keep it in the refrigerator, you can put it into a small dish, any that's left over, if you're going to use it in the next couple days. Put it in the refrigerator and then put just a skim of olive oil on top, and that helps keep it a little greener. And the base is right here. This particular ice cube tray has a nice little lid, and so this can go in the freezer and be ready for later. I've been doing other things. Here's our preserved parsley, which stays in the refrigerator. I've also been making pickles, and if you do any canning, be sure to use methods that are approved. And by that I mean it's always safe to use recipes that are from the extension group, UMass Extension, one of the other university extensions. There are a number of them that have great recipes, and they're tested. If you just take all kinds of recipes from online, you're not sure they're safe. And canning is not really an art, it's a science. And in order to preserve something successfully, you need it to be the proper amount of acid and the proper temperatures for cooking to ensure you get the jars sealed. Just having the jar sealed does not necessarily mean the content is safe. For instance, how people used to can tomatoes has changed a great deal from how it is now safe to can tomatoes because the tomatoes have changed. They're a lot sweeter than they once were. So you need to add acid to your tomatoes now, and those directions are available. The Ball Canning Company, who makes the canning jars and the lids, also puts out a book each year with new recipes in it. And again, those have been tested for safety and for quality as well. So rather than just picking up any recipe online, it's worth it to search out ones that have been approved for safety and quality by either a university or one of the major books, not just something somebody made up and decided to can. Another thing I made is peach salsa, and again, this came from the University of North Carolina Extension Department. I found the recipe online in their set of recipes, and I know that it's going to be a safely canned product. Again, most things need to be canned in a canner, either under boiling water for a certain length of time, or if you're canning something like green beans or a non-acid vegetable, these all have acid, and so they're safe in a water bath canner. But you need a pressure canner if you want to can corn or green beans or some of the mixtures, or meat, or chili, or any of those types of things. I prefer to use the water bath canner for this type of thing and jams and jellies, and use my freezer for things like green beans. It's just a matter of choice, but I don't have a pressure canner any longer, and you do require that for some recipes. So if you're going to can, make sure you look up the proper instructions and do it safely. Now, we'll wait for our pie to get out. Okay, not a bad looking pie. Okay. Today we've used produce from the garden to make a nice late summer meal. We're going to have pork kebabs with a marinade that includes parsley, onion, and marjoram. Salad, tabbouleh salad, which is a grain salad with tomatoes and cucumbers and onion and fresh mint as an herb, and peach pie, which includes some of the raspberries we've been picking, the late raspberries. We are getting ready for winter by doing some preserving, and I've made pesto, which I'll freeze in ice cube trays so that I'll have pesto cubes to use all winter. And I've been doing some canning, just some pickles and some salsa. I keep my parsley in a glass jar, and that too will last quite a long time in the refrigerator. I'm enjoying my flowers from the garden, and I made this little container for them. It's done with shells. Everybody picks up shells on the beach. Then what do you do with them when you get home? I glued a bunch of them to a tomato can, empty tomato can, and has made a nice summer vase, which has kind of a beachy feel to it. I use it to hold some of my colorful flowers. So that's the show for today. I'm Liz Davey, and you've been watching A Walk in the Garden on Norfolk Community Cable Television, NCTV.